to be sharing the budget with you all. So that's the fiscal year 2025 budget. And then we'll go into the conversations about the SIGCHI Future Summit that took place a couple of weeks ago. And we're just, we'll do a quick update and then discuss next steps and just opportunities for people here who are not already part of the conversation if you'd like to join. So that's our plan for the day. And we were thinking maybe we'll spend about 15 minutes on the first item and 20 to 30 minutes on the second. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so Hao-Chuan, do you need me to give you access to screen sharing or anything, or can you?
So Neha, actually, can you share the slides maybe? Because there's
Yeah,
a chance I may need to leave 15 minutes earlier to pick up my kid. Sorry about that.
no worries. So let me see if I can pull it up. Okay. I can also drop, maybe I cannot drop the link, so just give me a moment. You see it?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, thank you everyone. So Neha, sorry, I have to cue you to switch the slide. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
so next one. Yeah, thank you.
okay.
All right. Okay. So this is Hao Chen. I'm right now the VP. I'm wearing a hat with VP Finance. So I want to use this opportunity to update with the larger community about the SIGCHI budget for the fiscal year 2025. Okay. So as many of you know, SIGCHI's budget or SIG or ACM's budget, okay, it runs in fiscal years and it starts in July, okay, and end in June of a year. So for fiscal year 2025, it means we are budgeting for the starting time of July 1st, 2024, and it is ending at June 30, 2025. Okay. So every year, okay, so this is pretty much a routine. Every year in February, we will receive a notification from ACM, and that notification will tell us based on, because February is normally in the middle of a fiscal year, right? Like right now we are in fiscal year 2024, and it will update with us about how much we have, okay, in the account, okay? So ACM has an account for us, and it will tell us how much we have, and then add something aside here, I will explain later, okay? Because how much we have obviously is related to how much we can spend for the new fiscal year. And these are determined by how much we make, okay, the revenue we have, right? This could be from the conferences, the registration, it could be from the digital library downloads, from membership, and all these revenue channels and sources, and this will bring in money to us, okay? And also because we are running all this operation, right? The conferences, the meetings, and EC's operations, ACM overhead, and this will take money out, okay? So we are generating revenues, okay? And we are also spending money, okay? So with that said, now I need to, oh, so Neha, sorry, next slide, yeah. So I need to explain a little bit more about what does it mean by what we have, okay? So this has to do with the concept of budgetability, okay? Note that, okay, SIGCHI can actually budget more than what we have, okay? At the point, say we look at our account and we have certain amounts there, right? And we can budget over that because we are going to make more money, right? Continue making revenues, right? And so what would be a way to do a safe calculation and budgeting, okay? And ACM actually determined that, okay? For years, ACM has this fiscal regulation. Is a SIG need to have at least 50% of the planned expenses at the beginning of fiscal year, okay? So say if we plan to spend $200 in the coming years, how much do we need to have first? We need to have at least $100 in the pocket first. Okay, that's 50%, okay? So, in the worst case, if we are not generating, this is extreme case, right? Say if something happened in the new fiscal year, we are not generating any revenues, then we will pay off all the $100 and the ACM will have to pay the rest, right? And then that's it, right? But I don't see that's happening. Okay, but yes, we can budget more than what we have, but there's a limit for that. Okay, there's a rule we have to follow. Okay, next. So and here's a snapshot, right? We have done the budgeting exercise, okay, at the EC level, and we have sent out the budget to ACM, okay, but it's pending ACM approval, okay. So this is a big snapshot, okay. We should have 3.7 million in the account now, okay. You can think this as the cash we have, okay. And so consider everything, ACM's regulation, we can budget up to 7.5 million, okay. This is the upper limit we can do. We expect that, okay, conference, digital library downloads, membership, all this income will bring us 8 million, okay, revenue. But we are also going to spend, okay, the conferences, EC operation overhead is going to take out 7.5 million, okay. So, and then we are budgeting up to the limit, okay. So this is actually, given the 3.7 million cash we had, this is the maximum we can budget, 7.5 million. All right, now let's look at the breakdown. Okay, next slide. This is a breakdown, okay? So for the 7.5 million, okay, it has 3 parts. It has the EC budget, okay? It has the conferences budget, okay? It has the SIG overhead, okay? So conference budget is about 80%. SIG overhead is about 9%. So putting together, this is already 87%. And the EC budget is 13% here. And this might be the first time I have to check, but at least in recent years, the EC is budgeting, the budget expenses is less than $1 million, okay? And so you can look at all these categories. These are not all, actually. I mean, I just picked some, maybe the items that people are more interested in, but there are some small items and some kind of a nuanced details, right? But feel free to reach out to me if you want to know more. And but basically, I mean, among the 13% that for the EC budget, you know, less than $1 million, we still will spend quite some on conference support. Okay, this would be 460K. Okay, 48% for conference support. This including the PCS we are using, C-band system for registration, the program app, the conference development fund that we are giving to conferences, okay. There will be about 30%, okay, 122K for conference support. This including SDF, you know, the GMTA travel award chapter regional committees, okay. And also there are members benefit like Interaction Magazine. We provide Grammarly subscription, I think last year, but this year we have much less budget, okay. I think, so these are things we have to negotiate with maybe Grammarly, I'm not sure yet, okay. But we have a total of 115K for member benefits, okay. We have awards, okay, that's 40K, and this is about 4%. The percentage is probably similar to last year, but you know, translate this to cash, this is unfortunately less, okay. And the president's discretionary is not actually a lot, it's 2%, but these are like an emergency fund to cover some of the expense. Should we stop here for taking questions?
Questions, comments, anybody, feel free to raise your hand. You can unmute yourself. You can put comments in the chat. Any of them would work.
I'm just unmuting for now. Hi, it's Elizabeth. Sorry, I'm on the move. I would love to see, this slide is great. And I would love to see the full breakdown of the EG. And I'm not sure how we get that, but at some point, I would love to actually have all of that broken down into the specifics. Because the Conference Development Fund under conference support seems to me that it should be somewhere else, not conference support, but just trying to understand exactly what's under each of those. and also why they fit into the different categories. So this is a great first slide. Thank you so much. Would love to see more details.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the feedback. Cliff, yes.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Along the same lines, again, thanks. I agree with Elizabeth. This is wonderful to see this level of detail. My initial take is that this is some big cuts that we're talking about, right? When I look at these numbers, are you going to give a sense of like kind of how much down we're going on some of these compared to like the 24 budget?
Oh, we cut $1 million.
Okay.
We cut $1 million for EC budget. We cut $1 million.
And was that evenly across categories, or were there some categories that took bigger cuts?
Some categories are more difficult to remove. If you have a sense, PCS, the program app that we are using, SIGCHI use a lot, right? The mobile app. These are a contract that we had before, and these are pretty difficult to negotiate. Like PCS, I think this is 100K. I'm not really in a position, but it's very difficult to negotiate on.
Okay,
and
great.
So even we cut $1 million, we cannot. I don't know. I mean, we need to discuss. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. 100%. Thanks.
Yeah, super helpful. Going to follow up again. I think if we get all of these broken out into more details and try to understand, like as I say, I'm not sure why Dev Fund is under support. I would just love to get a full breakdown of all of the details, and then we can maybe help with understanding where there are cuts, but also maybe we can do a little bit of a retrospective of how we've gotten to needing cuts so that we can find out what are the highest value items. So I think number one is to get this broken down into a lot more detail so we can figure out, where the money is going, has gone, and where we want to invest in the future. But like I said, this is a great first start of a slide, and I'd love to drill into the details.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, sure. Okay. Next one. Next slide. Thank you, Neha. This is the last slide because I think that's what everyone is thinking about: financial well-being and the challenges we are facing. Okay. These are the data I had. I've done quite some mathematics. I can tell you, I was on the VP Finance role since maybe December, but I had no idea, okay, at the beginning what this role is about, and keep learning until ACM give me the data and tell me what's the goal, and I do my study, okay? Just like many of you, when I was a community member, even when I was a GC, I had no idea. I can tell you a lot of things I'm learning, okay? So, but this is a sharing of what I learned, okay? This is sort of my reflection and sharing of what I learned. I would have to say I'm really impressed. SIGCHI has been doing really well financially for many, many years, okay? Despite that, we actually have a large conference profile. We have 26 conferences, and we have big financial responsibility, right? I'm not sure whether people have a sense, but for 26 conference total, what will be the budget, okay, a year? You probably guess that, right? Well, I just have that. But now I keep that number in my mind very deeply. It's about 6 million, okay? So all the conference adding together, at least it's about 6 million, okay? And 6 million means like following ACM's this kind of security deposit rule means you need 3 million in the pocket first, okay? So that's pretty much is the minimum. Everything we can spend is on top of that. You have to deduct 3 million first, okay? You have 4 million cash, you have to move 3 million out first because that's for conference. So we were doing well in the past years, but we are facing some challenges. Okay, for this chart, let me explain a little bit. There are 2 bars, okay, 2 colors, okay. For the blue bars, these are the account balance, okay, that we had, okay. So I only have 4 years of data, but if we ask, we can get more. But I think this is enough to give us the most urgent thing we have to face, right? Yes, normally we have some cash in the account about between 4 million and 6 million. And so that's a very common impression that we had, maybe 4 million, right? There are some years where really good, right? But consider some of the context, why, right? So over the pandemic, the conference were not possible to happen, right? And so we maybe delay the contract, all these things, right? So we have more cash at that time, right? 2023 was the peak. We have about more than 6 million, right? And then, 2024, we have about 5 million, and 2025, that's the next fiscal year, we have less than 4 million, 3.7, right? But then we are budgeting, we are spending, right? And for every $200 we want to spend, we need to have 100 in our pocket. So I call this ACM security deposit requirement. Okay, so here you shows that we were pretty well. We have far more cash than what is security deposit we need. Of course, I mean, over the pandemic now and until 2023, 2024 was a little bit tight, and 2025 we barely make it. Okay, and this is after we cut $1 million of budget. Okay. Yes, Elizabeth, can I finish the slide first, and then I will
Yes,
let you
finish the slide. I thought you paused. Please go.
I have 2 more points, okay? And yes, everyone is looking for the answers, okay? Post-pandemic, we have a lot of challenges, obviously, right? Possibly including, but not limited to, okay? Some of the common reasons we think about inflection, maybe the participation culture and the behaviors are changing, sponsorship are difficult to get, conference losses, okay? We overestimate the revenues, okay? We underestimate the cost for many reasons, okay? And so on, okay? And there are new challenges. And there's one thing before we talk about why, but there's a new things, new challenges. ACM open access, okay? Now is a pay by downloads kind of model. It's like people go to digital library, they download, they have to pay. But open access changed the model, okay? And this will be fully implemented in 2026. Means like next year, the same time when we do the budget exercise for 2026, there may be newer challenges coming up, because we are not going to have that $1 million ACM, probably not, okay? ACM digital download, digital library kind of revenue, okay? I'm not sure how much will be the change. ACM may have a new formula, but it's going to have an impact, okay? So that's my quick summary. And Elizabeth, yes.
Yeah, again, this is absolutely great. So I love seeing this year-on-year change. And I'm wondering if we can have a look to what happened before the pandemic. So the pandemic changed everything. Open access, thank you for bringing up all of the different elements of what could be predictors of change or historically predictors of what would change. So I would love to see a year-on-year change from before the pandemic, if we have the data available, which we should, to just have a look at what are the key factors that might have changed here. This is extremely helpful as well as somewhat alarming to try and understand. And again, it goes back to the slide before, which is what have we been spending money on and where do we want to in the future? And if there's slightly longer, to your point about pandemic, slightly longer year-on-year change, if we could get it, that would be excellent, because then we can have a look at some of the different factors. And like I say, last slide, getting more details, this slide, getting more expansion, and then talking back into ACM about some of the changes like open access. Again, great slide, great provocation.
Thank you. I can add a little bit more, but I want to see if there are other questions. Okay, because I know this is for the larger community, so I really try to make the information understandable. It took me months, pretty much entire months to learn all this, right? And there's one thing I have to say, okay, one thing I learned, okay, and I also learned from ACM is accuracy of budgeting is really, really important, okay? It means like we have the plan expense, right? But if we don't stick to that plan, okay, it can have consequence. It can have consequences, okay? And it turns out if we overspend beyond the budget, okay, because budget is something approved by ACM, ideally everything should happen as the plan. But if we don't spend according to that plan, it can really eat our future budgetability, okay? And when we overspend this year, doesn't mean that things just go away. Things will come back to us because next year, very soon, when we have to rebudget, is coming up. And unfortunately, I have to say, for 2025 and actually part of this 2024, we are seeing this decline of account balance. Part of this is we as an entire community, we overspend beyond the budget, okay? We as the community, okay? we as the community, including the conferences, including, of course, including EC, okay? But I have the details, okay? I have the details, but I would just say we are not separable, okay? The conference and SIGCHI EC stick together. I see no places where we can isolate the two. And the budget actually in ACM, they see this as a whole, okay? So that's the thing I want to say, okay, yeah. Yes, Eamon, yeah.
Hi, thank you so much. Just wanted to just add a little bit of clarity to, or ask for a little bit more clarity from what Elizabeth just asked for. So, I mean, as many of you know, I ran operations for a few years around 2020 and thereabouts, 2019, 2020. That budget was about the same as a line item because I remember it being just under about $500,000 for running software and Condasoft and PCS and so forth. So that seems pretty flat to me. And so I'm curious when you say like the budget has been, this new budget was sort of cut in half. However, operations seems to be a large portion of that budget, which has been flat throughout the 5-year period. So in the spirit of asking for more detail on historical data, I would like to see it across each of those categories. So we know year over year where the spending was coming and going, because the large chunk there in operations has been flat for the 5-year period.
So it's pretty clear, at least the current research I have done, and you know, people, you know, this data is openly accessible to EC2. Okay, so anyone who stick around knows this, right? Is ECR spending according to the budget? Okay, I'm pretty sure EC is spending according to the budget for the operation. See, I know it's not, well, you know, all this software and all these, you know, operations are obviously, I mean, they are costly. I mean, you have to pay, right? And we stick to that. Okay, we stick to that budget. Okay. Yeah. So you know, it's inconvenient, you know, to obviously, I mean, the spending comes from somewhere. Okay, so yes, is there comments?
Yeah, can I quickly follow up on the ops expenses? Just
Yeah.
taking that as an example. That actually didn't stay flat this year. We have cut down there as well. So I think it has actually been across the board in terms of cuts. So in the previous year, for example, the ops expense alone for Candasoft was around $500,000. And in addition to that, we have for PCS and C event and other operational expenses such as software for the EC and for other committees like SurveyMonkey, Submittable, and so on, which adds up to, I think, 700 or 750, and that's been cut down this year. So we did cut down in, I think, across the board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, thanks for aiding. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Cash. That's good information to have. Can we get it on paper? Because that's something that I'd be interested in seeing. That's why I was asking for a historical tracking of all those verticals. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I think the follow up, we will talk about the summit, right? Because conferences is obviously one of the places where the spending can happen, right? Okay. And that's what we have data. Okay. For the conferences, we need to talk. Okay. Nihao, would you like to maybe take over? I think I finished all the budget information here.
Okay, but just wrapping up. So more detail on where the money went and more detail on where the money is going to go. I just want to quickly mention that we do every year write up an article on the items in the budget. And so we will be doing that also. It will be a blog post probably in a couple of weeks. And we can break it down in terms of what we had intended to spend, building on last year's article and what was spent here. And there have been conference losses for a number of reasons. We will lay them out. And, you know, the tricky part is just that if we talk about money that was to be spent and is overspent, we don't want to be assigning blame to anybody, right? Because everyone's doing the best that they can. At the same time, we want to be responsible as a community. So we do want to be clear about where money was spent that that wasn't supposed to be, or for various reasons, whether it was overhead or it was accessibility or what have you. So Elizabeth.
Yeah, so this is, oh, sorry, someone's just calling me. I'm turning that off. So this is great. If what we can do is the slide before and this slide just break down. So the slide before, I think, had a bunch of different categories of percentages. I think we don't need something pretty. I would love to just see a breakdown of each of those areas and what was spent. And on this, I love this, just a longer trajectory on over the years, because I think the analysis that, you know, the pandemic made a difference is really important. And the raising of the questions of what changed over that time and how we're thinking about conferences, which is part of SIGCHI for the future as well. Hybrid, not hybrid, which conferences, how many conferences, this all sort of feeds into the bigger conversation. But actually just getting more details would be excellent.
Yeah.
And the services that are offered, what is the return on investment for people feeling like they have a value for being at SIGCHI? So all of those little details matter a lot as we reconfigure the SIGCHI value proposition for members in the future. So this is a fantastic first sort of slice at things.
Okay.
And
So
if there's data that we don't have yet, but you think that we should get it, I mean, we're open to those suggestions as well. So,
Yeah.
you know, with regards to membership, for example, I know that there's been conversations about membership benefits, and we did a survey last year around this time, like in May, to get a sense for what people want. I mean, at any point, we're only going to get feedback from, say,
Mhm.
like 20-30% of our
Sure.
members. But if you have like particular questions in mind that you want us to ask, I mean, we can put
Yeah.
that into the survey for this year. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would love to. The last slide, just the details on where the spends are. This slide, the sort of longer trajectory would be excellent. And I don't need beautiful slides. I'm just like curious about it. And also, I completely agree with you, Neha. I mean, we cannot get feedback from everybody in the community for all of the things they want. But part of your leadership and the leadership team is around, here's what we can continue to support. Here's what might need to change, which is why I love the analysis, which is what is open access doing? How is it changing the community? Transparency around details as well as vision, I think is going to be super helpful going forward. I really appreciate these details.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So I assume you're okay with us putting that in an interactions article?
Well, we can work on it together. Yes, absolutely. Of course. I would love to.
all right. Yeah. Ni hao, can I say one more word?
Sure.
Okay. Right. Before we move on to summit. Okay. So thank you, everyone. I have to say I'm really nervous. Of course, I'm a new VP Finance, but also this is a hard conversation. Okay. I just want to add one sentence. We have to change now. Okay. I'm not kidding. Well, sorry, I'm serious, but I'm not kidding. SIGCHI has some crisis. Okay. So I have projection, okay? I have projection, but it's very scary projection next year, okay, for FY 2026. So I want to invite everyone to think about this. I think we have to change something, okay? And the biggest spends that we are facing, definitely, I mean, and also revenue, right? Think about this. It's definitely the 26th conference we had, okay? It's definitely that, okay? And that's what we are operating around, okay? And we care about our conferences. Everyone care about our conferences, okay? So that's it, okay? I do my job as VP Finance, okay? And I'm happy to, just provoke and engage everyone in the conversation. Thank you, yeah.
Thank you, Hachwan. And I want to just second that. I know that Hachwan has been studying the budget very, very carefully over the last couple of months, and also has looked at the history. And not all years in the last 5 or 6 have been great in terms of budgeting, but we've been through the pandemic, and we've also had some major losses with Kai the last couple of years, and I know that the steering committee has been working on restructuring and changing formats for Kai. So I think across the board, we understand that there are some changes that need to be made. I think there's also work to be done with the smaller conferences, the specialized conferences, to really help them out with their budgeting exercises. So anyway, I fully am in support of putting out more details with regards to where the money was to be spent and was spent, and we'll work on that for the article, Elizabeth. So thank you, Hachwan, and shall we try to be a little more optimistic at this point? I know that that this is a grim situation, and also that we'll get through it. And we've been looking at it very, very carefully. I'm going to just move this window here. Okay, so going to the next slide. All right. So we did the summit last month. We had about 150 people. I want to just say thank you to everybody who's here, who was at the summit. There were about 100 people in person. There were about 50 online. And it was really quite a remarkable event. I mean, I think it wasn't, we didn't know what to expect, but I think the conversations that we had were really fantastic. So thank you for everyone who's here, who was there. There's a blog post that you see on the slide. There's a QR code for it that you can take a look at. It's just to capture all of the conversations that we had. So we had 3 days of different types of conversations. We tried to leave some room for brainstorming sessions. We also had some breakout sessions, and we then figured out some next steps and areas to focus on. So those are the 5 areas that you see here. They're also in the blog post, and we wanted to make sure that everyone who wasn't at the summit, if they wanted to participate in any of these conversations, we would make space for that to happen. So on our SIGCHI Slack workspace, we have channels for each of these, and they're open to everyone who wants to be a part of those conversations. We had conversations about ACM Open and publishing models, and that's certainly something that's a big elephant in the room, not just for us, but for all SIGs. I will share that even at the SIG governing board, there's been lots of conversations about ACM Open, and honestly, most of the SIGs, if not all, feel completely unprepared to take this on. So this is very much the current conversation. And the ACM Council, I believe, is meeting next week to also discuss more questions that have been coming up and what we should expect and how much of a loss we should expect with that. So there's also a SIG governing board meeting in April, and I'll share back after that meeting to let you all know what the conversations are. We talked about peer review in a few different sessions, and there's clearly many people who are passionate about different aspects of it. So that's the largest group of people right now. And if any of you want to join in, please let me know and I'll add you. But we've been discussing a range of topics under peer review, and we'll bring them all up there. We're also going to take these conversations to Kai 24. So if you're there, if you're connecting virtually, you can definitely participate there as well. The third topic is conferences. So as you heard, we are deeply concerned about conferences. We have been. This is literally keeping me up at night. And there are different reasons why different conferences are struggling. I want to just add that I'm also doing a survey for the SIG governing board of conferences across all SIGs right now. And so there are challenges across SIGs. I think we're certainly the most ambitious of the lot, I would say. We're trying to do a lot with our conferences, whether it's accessibility or hybrid and such, and not everyone is. But getting that data from other SIGs would also be helpful, I think, in understanding where are other SIGs at and what should we be doing. The other thing we're trying to do, and Cash was really helpful, he wrote up a 2-3 page summary of everything that we are doing to support our conferences through Candasoft, the PWA, all of that. And we've been sharing that with other SIGs to see if they are interested in also sharing the cost for it with us. So that's a conversation that's going on. No one's really kind of come forward to say, we want to do this, but it's a conversation that was just started. I see there's a chat message. Sorry, I'm not able to. Oh, thank you, Cliff. Yeah, so I think a lot of the SIGCHI conferences have actually filled out the survey already. Thank you for the quick response, and I'll be sure to report back on all of the conferences, not just the SIGCHI ones. Okay. On volunteering, this was actually, surprisingly, it was something that came up again and again and again, but I think it came up in the context of peer review and conferences. And so by itself, it wasn't the most popular of topics, but it was a thread that came up in the others. So we have a group for discussing volunteering loads and such, and recognizing our volunteers, and also awards, which Nicholas brought up. And finally, students and early careers. So what can we do to engage students in early careers more, and on what topics and such? So there's a good group of people who are interested in that. So those are the 5. And I think the 6th kind of meta topic that came up in a lot of conversations was just transparency. So, transparency with regards to finances, transparency with regards to just policies, like what's going on with ACM Open, how is that going to impact conferences, what should they be worried about? So that's the update. And I know that many of you are on the SAC already, but are there questions? Like this whole exercise was really to be able to take a systemic view of our conferences. And I think that there was a lot of knowledge sharing, and we need to just, keep those conversations going and see where we want to be in the next edition of conferences. So for example, just today, we found out that there's a conference that's happening in Israel, and ACM is not willing to go ahead with that. So now we need to figure out what's going to happen there. And for all these reasons, it's helpful because we have 26 conferences to be able to pool resources and share notes. Questions? Comments? Interest in next steps?
Oh, I can't find my little hand up, but I'm talking. Is that okay?
And then Fabian. So go ahead.
I just wanted to say I really, really like this idea of looking at all of the different conferences and understanding who they influence and where they overlap and where they don't. So I'm a big, big fan of that analysis, and would love to do some visualization or analysis and support any kind of review of all of the conferences, how they overlap, how they don't, who's in, some kind of just a review. And this is a great idea. So anything I can do to support, let me know.
Actually, what would be really helpful, Elizabeth, is if you could maybe list out what are you curious about, right? What would you like to know about the conferences? I mean, we asked a bunch of questions in the survey, and I know that some people thought that there were too many, but they've actually filled them out. So it would be helpful to know what you have in mind.
I'm just getting a sense for the whole community of what all of the different conferences are. I know we have our calendar, but I'm not sure that everybody understands why they all exist and how we can maybe do some cross-fertilization. Anyway, I just love this idea of doing a review, not to stop anything, but to understand where there are opportunities for cross-fertilization and maybe kind of consolidation and or introduction. So there might be small conferences, and you're like, oh, let's broker some of these conversations. Let's see where we're putting money and where that could be doubled down in some way or whatever. I'm just super curious. I've not looked into this space for a while, so apologies for being a little ignorant of the space. But as you're looking at all of that, I think this would be a great, again, just a great review and maybe a conversation to have. Look at all of this energy we have, and here are the different aspects of HCI that exist. So it might be a promotional moment as well as a understanding moment.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. One of the things that we discussed at the summit, and a lot of these conversations actually happened there. One of the things we discussed was co-location of conferences. So I was also speaking with others in the SIG governing board who've been doing FCRC, for example, which is, I forget the full form of that, sorry, but you can look up ACM FCRC, and that's a bunch of different ACM conferences across SIGs that take place together, I think every 4 years. And so there was one in 2023, there was one in 2019. And I was trying to understand from Donna Capo why conferences would be interested in doing that, and should SIGs be looking into that, or is that not a good idea? I mean, what kinds of costs could be shared and such. So I'll also share notes on that, and I actually did share notes on that in our conferences conversation.
Yeah, this is wonderful. Appreciate you pushing on that. Really appreciate that bringing together of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for all of the feedback. Fabiano.
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much to you, Neha, and everyone involved in the organization of the summit. It was really great being there, and also all the discussions that we have in there. I guess that the areas or the points that you raised here, right, they really speak to what we've discussed there, and I really like the idea of having these sort of channels in Slack. I sort of have a curiosity in terms of how we are going to move forward, right? Because I guess that we got a lot of momentum during the summit. People very interested in cooperating, in collaborating, in discussing things and moving forward. I think that the Slack channels, they are really good in terms of trying to articulate those sort of discussions. Nevertheless, I'm just curious in terms of how we will organize ourselves, right? I think that, I don't know, I think that it would be important to have a representative or some representatives in each of those sort of topics, sort of to coordinate or to take the leadership in the discussions. Otherwise, it will stay there and it will not move forward. And I think it would be really a pity if it doesn't move forward. So I'm just curious how the EC is planning to do that, coordinating that, if there will be leaders in this sort of work group so that we can refer to, and then we can really move forward. So, yeah.
I hear you volunteering to be one of the voices leading it.
Well, not exactly, but I'll be happy to be engaged, right?
Let me just share. So there's a bunch of things I have on the list for next steps for the summit, right? So one was the blog post, just getting that out so that people who weren't there could be aware of what had happened. The next is, and also Hachman is actually, as you can see, he's been completely consumed by the budget. And so getting that out the door. And our plan though, and we have this panel that we're planning for Kai, and we want to work backwards from that. So where do we want to be, and what conversations do we want to see happen there? Peer review is definitely a topic that many people were interested in. So there's going to be some reorganization there just because there's so many people. And so what I wanted to do for that, and I would welcome help, and this is why we wanted to have this session, to also ask you all for help with just going through the documents that we had from the summit to pull out some of the ideas and then see how we move forward from that. So I think people have been sharing best practices from other venues, but we want to move forward to see, okay, what do we do with these best practices, for example, in peer review. For ACM Open, I think it's a little more straightforward. So it's really about a Q&A, so to speak. So when there are updates that can be shared, certainly I will share them. This is, from the SIG governing board, but also as we're making sense of what the implications will be for conferences. Those are discussions we can have in there. And then for early careers, I think there are some people from the Futuring committee who are able to move us forward on that. But again, if you all would like to volunteer on any of these 5 and you want to help with taking the lead, because this isn't really, I mean, we're trying to create the spaces so that there are voices that are taking it forward. We don't want to be the ones who are like the EC members should not be the ones who are leading those conversations. So Fabiano, if you'd like to move us forward on any of these, by all means.
Well, we can keep talking about that. And also, Neha, but you know, I see where you're coming from, and you're saying, you know, sharing best practices and things like that. I just would like to, I don't know, that we sort of try to put or to envisage what will be the result of each of those working groups, right? So it will end up in a blog post, will end up in a document or whatever. I guess that people, well, at least I need sort of, you know, a goal or envisioning the results in order to try to get to that particular point. Right now, for me, it's very blurred and it's very, okay, let's share, let's talk. But then, you know, there will be always 1 or 2 people very willing to do that, and it will stay like that. As said, I just don't want to, you know, that we end up not missing this opportunity, because I really felt the energy in the summit and people willing to do that. But if you don't have the animators in those forums, from my experience in past initiatives, it's just gonna die.
100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let's fix that. And I think we have a bunch of people here. We have a bunch of people probably that we'll see in the next session. So I think that that's this is the point of this conversation was actually to figure out how do we move forward. So point well taken, and also I'm glad I can count on you. Are there others here who would like to contribute to any particular conversations? Cliff, you unmuted your video, so I assume you have a desire to.
I mean, you know me, I'll always volunteer quickly for anything. I feel like I'm working on all 5 of these just in the context of the CHI conference. So that's one question, right? Is how much of this do we want to balance within conference versus across conferences, right? And I see what you're saying, like the specific effort here is across conferences. Like, how do we find efficiencies across conferences and everything? So maybe one of the things I could do is help kind of socialize this to our steering committee and find specific ways we could work with other steering committees. So for instance, Fabiano, like there's some CSCW and CHI connections here that I think we could make that would be really interesting and things like that. So that's one way to approach this too, is to have the steering committees take on some of this and maybe come up with, like, each steering committee come up with a little subcommittee across all 5 of these that then connects with each other, or maybe just the bigger steering committees or something like that.
Yeah, that could be. So, I mean, one thought that came to mind, just listening to Cliff and also Fabiano, was what do we do with this sharing, right? Where is that going? And I think it has to go to our conferences, right? That's where that is who we are. And so making sure that we have our conference representatives there who are also participating in these conversations, especially the ACM Open, peer review, and the conference sharing ones, right? Certainly the others as well, but those I think can be a little more homogeneous across the different venues. So we do monthly sessions with conferences. We discuss those as well, and I think that we need to figure out other ways as well to get information out. I think that's what we should focus on now. So we will be doing also an open session next month. And one thing we can do is just plan ahead. So before our open session in April, you know, we make some progress, and then we come back, the 5 groups together, to kind of talk about where we're at, what are we talking about, what are the ideas that we want to take to the conferences, and so on.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Neha, and everyone engaged in that. It's been really great experience so far. So just would like to stress that.
Thank you so much for contributing and participating and also being up really, really early. Carrie's been involved, Jessica. So I think, she's been very, very engaged. I think she's out today, but she's
Oh,
been-
no. Yeah, she's traveling. I'm just saying, Cliff just said, with the steering committee should do more work. So, Cliff is giving Carrie more work.
I think the hope is that this is going to create less work if we look across the board, right? So that not everyone needs to be doing their own reinvention of the wheel. That's really the hope. But yeah, not just her, a whole lot of people. Yes. Okay. So anything else? Is it a good idea for our next meeting to talk about the budget first or the summit first? Did the budget just kind of bring down everyone's energy?
A budget, because there will be no summit without a budget. I'm a very practical person.
Also then also when we're talking about the summit, it goes so the mood goes up. So which means we'll end in a positive note, I think.
Fabiano, I love that. We start with the brain and the detail, and then we go to the high of the social. I love it.
Sounds good.
Neha, thank you so much for running all of this. Everybody, thank you for running this, who's organized it. Look forward to seeing more of the details, because honestly, when you have budget, you can have fun. And the reality is, how do we make sure that the best fun for the best, everybody is possible? And I really appreciate this idea of looking at the conferences, looking at the budget, understanding the details, the longer term trajectories and the factors that are affecting us. So really appreciate this conversation.
Yeah, I think, again, to your point, right? We don't want to be pointing fingers at conferences and saying, you lost us money. Like, that's not what we want to be doing. And I think that's what Houchan was also trying very hard to not mention. But we have had conferences losing money, and we don't want them to lose money again. So if we don't want them to lose money again, we have to talk about it and be very clear about how we should manage our resources better. So that's what we need to focus on now.
Well, I was going to say that it's actually one of the things about a long-term organization, which SIGCHI is when we find a really niche spot, losing money on a conference that is the beginning of a whole new area for us to invest in the long term, from students to ideas to whatever, is okay. Losing money on conferences over the long term, because those are so niche and consolidation might be the right thing, is a different conversation. But I think losing money on a conference isn't the right unit of analysis, because we might want to fund and invest in something that starts being called NIPS and ends up being called NeurIPS. That was very small and is now huge. Investing in a future with a loss because we believe in it, but we have a critical understanding of why it's important to invest, is really important. Losing money on conferences over the long term may need a reshuffle. So I agree with you, Neha, and I think it's also a critical analysis of an investment for the longer term and an understanding of where we're investing right now, which is why the budget details matter so much to me as someone who was Secretary Treasurer of the ACM at one point, do that kind of analysis. And I really appreciate these conversations. I'm sorry, everybody, I'm kind of boring. I like spreadsheets, I like numbers, but I also like that investment for the future. And I really appreciate this conversation.
I think we would be very happy to have a conversation with you that goes into more details, and you can maybe help us figure out ways to put that across, such that it's not about pointing fingers or pointing blame, but really just about where are we as a community and where do we want to go. I think that's what we want to focus on. I will also just say, just in case it's reassuring to hear, I've been talking with the SIG governing board chair a lot about the budget and about the conferences, and also other SIGs. So it's not that we're the only ones that have lost money on our conferences by any means, but we don't want to stay here. We want to get out of this. Okay, so I think with that, and we're just at the hour mark almost, if you have any other thoughts, feel free to add them now or forever hold your peace until next meeting.
Okay, I just want to go thank you. And to everybody who was involved, I like to end on a high note. I want to say thank you.
Glad that you're here. Thank you all.
Thank you. I really appreciate having these conversations. Thank you, Neha, for setting this all up. Really, really wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Hatron's not here, but I will let him know that everyone was very appreciative.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for joining. Thank you, Becky.